Want to finally burn off that stubborn belly fat? But are you accidentally eating things that are stopping you? Then you need to watch this entire video. I'm going to explain 6 common foods that can directly prevent you from ever losing that belly fat. And I'm talking about a specific type of fat called visceral fat. That's the fat that wraps around your organs and keeps your body in a constant state of inflammation. And guess what? When your own fat is inflamed because you have visceral fat, that alone can keep you from burning it off. So let's get right into it with the first food. And it's this right here, low-fat yogurt. Seems healthy, right? But look at this label, 27 grams of carbohydrate. There's only 19 grams of sugar listed, but there's an additional 8 grams of hidden sugar in the form of starch that they don't really shout about. You really have to read and understand the label, because the first ingredient is low-fat milk, the second is sugar water, and then the next one is modified food starch. That's hidden sugar right there. This is what it is. It's often a powder. And let me tell you about industrial starch. It's not just your regular modified food starch. It can be modified cornstarch, maltodextrin, and many other types of starch. The reason why it's often worse than sugar is that it's not really sweet, so people end up consuming a lot more of it than they would actual sugar. And if you look at the glycemic index, it actually turns into glucose. That's blood sugar, a lot faster than regular table sugar does. So even though it's not always classified as a sugar on the label, it acts like a sugar. But sometimes even worse. It's creating this constant spike in your blood sugar, which can really wear out your pancreas faster and lead to more problems with diabetes. What's really wild is that the main purpose of starch in many processed foods is just to act as a filler. It's something cheap to add bulk to a product. Industrial starch often goes through high heats, chemical processing, and deodorizers. They even take out the color using different chemicals. So you're ending up with this completely dead product that then has to be flavored and colored to look appealing. And if we look at the bottom of the label, you'll often see made with bioengineered food ingredients. That's just another way of saying GMO or genetically modified ingredients. So it looks like a healthy choice, but it's often not very healthy at all. The next food item we're going to talk about is processed meat. Now, processed meat is very different from something like grass-fed beef. Let's take a look at these chicken hot dogs with pork added. The very first ingredient listed is something called mechanically separated chicken. What in the world is mechanically separated chicken? Well, it's a highly refined product where they process it in a way I'm not even going to go into detail about right now. But what I am going to point out is the corn syrup. Corn syrup is actually made from cornstarch, that industrial sugar we just talked about. This is an unhealthy sugar that will really spike your blood sugar levels. And when you add sugar to meat, you're going to get something called advanced glycated end products, or AGEs. These are not very healthy for you. To process these meats, they often use high heats and sometimes even ammonia or chlorine to kill bacteria. This is the same kind of stuff they put in a lot of chicken nuggets and other breaded chicken products. And of course, they also added modified cornstarch in here as well. You really don't want to buy a hot dog that has that much starch and sugar in it. A much better hot dog would be something like this. Let's take a look at these ingredients. Organic grass-fed beef, then we have sea salt, organic vinegar, baking soda, organic garlic, and organic spices. Now take a wild guess how much carbohydrate is in this. 0 grams. So there you are trying to lose weight, thinking you're eating all this great protein, when in fact you might be consuming a lot of hidden sugars and unhealthy ingredients. The next one we're going to get to is my favorite Atkins products. These products give you the perception that, wow, it's keto-friendly, it's low-carb, only 1 gram of sugar. You automatically think, man, this is great, until you actually read the ingredients. The first few ingredients here are milk protein concentrate and then soy protein isolate. These are very low-quality proteins, some of the cheapest proteins you can possibly imagine. And right down at the very bottom, it contains bioengineered food ingredients. This isn't truly nutrient-dense. It doesn't come from any real food. It's highly processed. If Dr. Atkins, the creator of the diet, ever knew that his company would end up marketing products like this, he'd probably be very upset. I know I would be if someone started to market something like this under my name. But typically, when you consume these so-called keto-friendly foods, they add a lot of fiber in there. It's usually industrial fiber, synthetic fibers. And what happens? You're going to get a lot of bloating and diarrhea. And over time, we're finding out that these types of fibers can really negatively affect our weight. Just like artificial sweeteners have been found to create more problems with our gut, converting into things that then lead to insulin resistance and more weight gain problems. The next food we're going to talk about is juice. You pick up a bottle of juice and the first thing you see is 100% vitamin C. You're thinking, wow, that's healthy. But then you actually read the ingredients. This particular one only contains 5% actual juice. Let's see what the ingredients are. Oh wow, water and high fructose corn syrup. This is literally liquid candy. I think this is almost false advertising. They probably shouldn't be able to put that on there. Now, the other thing that's interesting about juice is when they have concentrated orange juice. That means that the juice could have been sitting in a vat for up to a year, losing almost all of its nutrition. Then they take it out and add water back to turn it into something that's really not very nutrient dense. And if we're talking about actual juice, like regular orange juice, it usually has more sugar than soda. That's a lot of fructose. And here's the thing about fructose, it can't be broken down by all of your cells. Only your liver can really process that fructose. What happens because of that is your liver starts generating a lot more fat. It's more likely to create a fatty liver than actual glucose does, because with glucose, at least all your cells can metabolize it and use it for energy. The next product I want to talk about is agave nectar. You see it in a lot of healthy recipes. It has something like between 15 and 30 on the glycemic index. Now, how can that be? It's a sweetener. It tastes just like sugar syrup. Well, that's because 80 to 90% of it is fructose. Only a very tiny bit of it is actually glucose. You really don't want to consume things that are very high in fructose because it's going to really mess with your liver. A better option for a sweetener would be something like coconut sweetener. And also, raw honey is better than agave, but if you're really trying to lose weight, especially belly fat, probably not a good idea to consume a lot of any sweetener. Because anytime you consume sugar and starch, you're going to spike your glycemic index, and that's going to bump you out of ketosis if you're following a ketogenic diet. Just one little side point about insulin that I think would be super valuable for all doctors to do: periodic screenings of testing your insulin levels. Because your insulin will often go high about 15 years before your blood sugars start to elevate. But we don't typically do that. Doctors don't routinely test insulin. So it's often left until your blood sugars finally rise and then you're diagnosed with diabetes. But that problem has been brewing in the background for 15 years. And well, now we've got to put you on medication. Lastly, I'm going to get into mayonnaise. Most commercially produced mayonnaise is basically mostly soybean oil that's processed through industrial heats and hexane chemicals. You're getting a lot of extra things in there that you really don't want. This type of fat, these polyunsaturated fats, tend to go into your fat cells, and they don't get burned off as easily as saturated fat. They tend to stay in your fat cells longer. And when you're constantly consuming and storing these in your fat cells, I think this is behind a lot of chronic disease. And time is going to prove that, especially since they often call these oils heart healthy, which I believe is a class action lawsuit waiting to happen. So now you know at least 6 common foods and the sneaky ingredients in those foods that you should really try to stay away from if you are serious about losing your belly fat. We're good.